And we always start our meetings off with prayer. So we're going to have opening prayer by our pastor, Dr. John E. Jackson.
Eternal God, we thank you for this day, for this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Now, as always, we invite your presence to tarry with us, to abide with us. We ask your spirit of wisdom, clarity, God, to come forth. And in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. We thank you so much. And like I said, make sure that you, that if you're going to ask a question, and you can ask more than one question. So there are index cards. Raise your hand if you need an index card, and raise your hand to get your index card picked up. But you can ask as many, write as many things down on the index card. We thank you so much for being here at Trinity United Church of Christ. And my name is Emmett Mosley. I'm one of the associate ministers here at Trinity United Church of Christ, Gary. We're glad you're here. And we're not going to waste time. This is such an important topic that many folks wanted to make sure that we presented an opportunity for the new team that is working here in Gary to come in and give us their plan of action and for you to be able to ask questions. So without any delay, now, like I said, if you have a question, there are sessions where you go to, people will just extemporaneously step up. We're not going to do that here. So if you have a question, because we want to stay on time, your time is important, our time is important, but we want this information to get out. So ask your questions if you want, and we have a couple of people who are putting together those questions so we can ask as many questions as possible so everybody can gain some clarity as we move forward on the agenda for the public schools of Gary, Indiana. And right now we're going to ask for introduction of the emergency manager and the team, Mr. Fred Siemens. All right, give him a hand.
Well, first of all, thank you to Reverend Mosley. It's a pleasure to be here at Trinity United Church of Christ, and I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. My name is Fred Seaman. I actually live in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm part of the emergency management team that's been working with Dr. Peggy Hinckley since we started this, I think the first week in August. And we're actively seeking to solicit comments and opinions and perceptions about the Gary School Community School Corporation. So we're very, very pleased that you've decided to join us this evening. I've got the distinct pleasure of introducing Dr. Peggy Hinckley. She is the emergency manager. She's leading this effort. She is a Gary native, superintendent for, I think, 28 years, Peggy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. She knows what she's doing. And one of the things that Peggy will be talking about is how we intend to get from point A to point B. As you well know, this is a challenge. This situation didn't occur overnight, and it's not going to get solved or resolved overnight. It's going to take some time. But we think we've got the right team with the right skills and who knows how to do what needs to get done. And we're going to hear about that this evening and also give you the opportunity to ask questions and get responses to those questions. So again, thank you for being here. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Hinckley.
There's two mics. Good evening. Good evening. Listen, I think we're all courageous because tonight the Packers Packers and the Bears are put in. Probably a few people in this room are a little annoyed that we picked this night, so we'll do our best to get you going along your way. Thank you for coming on this. I know your lives are all busy and you could have done something else, so I appreciate y'all being here. And so let me just, I'm going to talk a little bit. Trevor Mosley asked me to talk about a few things, so I'll say that up front, and then I'll be happy to answer all your questions. One of the things, though, I do want to mention to you that we're working hard to sort of re-energize it is the One Church, One School effort. It's been around for 18 years, Fred?
Yeah.
I think it's 18 years. That, in those years, was kind of the organizing, how do we organize volunteers to work with schools? And it's not been as active in recent years, but Reverend Protho has had, he's trying to organize about 5 or 6 congregations to adopt a school. So he's trying to organize that. And it's just really for adults that have some time and want to volunteer and work with kids. You know, children always can use an extra couple of hands, and you know, you probably have great skills. Most of all, we would like your heart, because children need, always appreciate loving adults around them. And so if you have the opportunity, we would certainly encourage your congregation to think about working through them to adopt a school. Because the one thing I found in Gary, Indiana, because I was born here a very long time ago. Please don't, I'll tell you how long ago, but you all can figure it out by looking at me. But, you know, I was telling Reverend Mosley, the neighborhood, I grew up in Brunswick, and in that neighborhood, you know, if you were acting up, but you were down at the corner and your mama couldn't see you, but Mrs. Tonkovich could see me. And she had no problem opening that door and saying, listen, little Peggy, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to call your mother. And by golly, she did. And, you know, those were the days we did look out for one another, and we could certainly use that today. So I hope you'll think about doing that. So we've been here about 2 months. It's been pretty busy, but all good. One of the things that I'm immediately reminded, and I've worked in school corporations for over 40 years, and that is there are always great people that want to be here and want things to be better. And I found that certainly a bountiful supply of Gary Community School Corporation employees, teachers and staff, people in the community. I've met with ministers in several different groups, stakeholders, business people, people that want to see us succeed. So please know that as we're trying to go forward, we've certainly had our challenges, but our work is to move us forward, to put Gary in a better place than, you know, as we're struggling right now. And so that's what we want, and that's what we're trying to do. So I'm going to address a couple of things that he has written down here because he asked me to. So first of all, education. Our responsibility, of course, is to teach children, first of all, to read, write, and do math on grade level. And, you know, we have some schools that are struggling. But the first day when teachers reported, we had put in place some curriculum and some training for them so that we could up some of the rigor in our schools and to address some of the academic problems that we have with some of our students. And so we'll be monitoring that, hopefully, and this process has been used other places, and it does help to improve our outcomes. And that's very important to us because we want all of our students not only to pass the state assessment and pass the 10th grade exam so they can get a diploma, but we're also going to be building capacity over the next year at the Gary Career Center. Back in the 80s, when I was superintendent at Little River Forest, you know, Little River Forest over there, they called us the River Rats. I didn't like that very much. We were the ingots. Took me a while. I knew what an ingot was. It was a steel, but that didn't seem like a great school mascot. But, you know, you take what you got. But the Gary Career Center was a very robust institution. And it is not as much as it used to be. But we believe that that career center and building capacity for career and technical education is a very important part of our future in Gary. Because it's not that we're not interested in sending children to college, but you know, there are a lot of other things that children would like to take a look at. I always remember when I was at, I served 11 years at Warren Township on the east side of Indianapolis, and we had the Walker Career Center. And there was a young woman I met there who was in the cosmetology program. And she told me she had been accepted to Ball State University. I said, well, why are you doing cosmetology? She said, well, I'm going to work. I can use my cosmetology certification to earn my way so I can get through college. I thought, what a smart young lady you are. You know, instead of going into debt, you know, and spending a whole bunch of money. So I look at the Career Center not only to be that whether you want to be an EMT or whether you want to do something in computer-aided design or pre-engineering, those kinds of things. Not just because maybe that's the work you want to do, but it may give you a vehicle to have work so you can earn money and then go on to school if that's what you choose to do. As you know, it's situated right next door to Ivy Tech. And it seems to me we could have a stronger partnership for what could be an early college high school. Now, anybody paying college tuition, I haven't paid it recently because my daughter's grown, but if you're paying it, you know that it takes your breath away. And so when we're able to do, and our high schools currently offer dual credit, so I don't want you to think we're not doing that. But an early college high school where kids could literally get the equivalent of an associate's degree, that's 2 years of college, and you're paying $25 an hour rather than whatever it is now, which is a whole lot more. So we see the future educationally for building capacity at the Gary Career Center with career and technical ed, because that's a very important part of communities. And we've had people in Gary, the fire department, for example, they would like us to have an EMT program. They want an introductory program because they want to get people interested in being firefighters. And they're not getting applications from people in Gary. Okay, well, shouldn't we want to do that? I mean, it doesn't mean, there's nothing wrong with being a fireman. My little great nephew, who's 3 years old, that's what he wants to be for Halloween. He's really into fire trucks and sirens and firemen. So I bought him a little costume so he can do that. So we're working on improving our results in some of our schools. We have other schools that have been very successful, and we'll continue to work on those. You know, that plan for education is certainly to keep that going. In terms of the deficit, this is a daunting problem. I would be a fibber if I didn't tell you it's daunting. And yes, we do have a big deficit, and yes, we are overspending our revenue every month by a sizable amount of money. So what we're trying to do is work on first balancing or getting our month-to-month budget in better shape. I know there's a lot of, I know that we ran 2 referendums here that were unsuccessful. And someone asked me on the radio last week if I thought there would be another referendum. And what I said to them was this: I think we have to show the Gary community that we're getting our house in order financially before we can go to the taxpayers and say, we want you to pay more money. And I just say that honestly, because if we don't have our spending under control, you know, if you saw NIPSCO's petitioning for, what, a 20% increase on gas or something. So if that happens, I'm not knocking NIPSCO because, you know, I'm glad my heat goes on. Or in my air conditioning, which broke last weekend. Of course it did when it was 90 degrees. Well, it never would do that. So when they increase, and let's say your bill goes up $50 a month, you have to figure out, unless you get more money, you have to cut your expenses to make up that $50. It's just like at home. And that's what we have to do in the school corporation. We have to figure out where we're spending too much money, and then we have to reduce those things. So we've done some things, because we could do these immediately. Things like, we really don't approve overtime unless we absolutely have it. We used to have a lot of overtime. Supplemental pay. Now, there's a purpose for supplemental pay. And that is if people are doing additional work outside of what their scope, like their job descriptions say. But a lot of that is done in the summer, so it really isn't something that comes up as much here. We don't have credit cards anymore. We've taken those back because we all know personally that when you have a credit card, it's a lot easier to buy those 3 pairs of shoes than to leave them there. And then when the bill comes, we are so sad. So we just needed to just not have that as bleeding money there. So we tried to do that. We're looking at our staffing to see where we can become more efficient. So those things aren't going to save us a bunch of money, but you'd be surprised how much money that you bleed and things like that. And those are things you would do at home. But the bigger picture, I'm not going to close schools in September. We're not going to, we've audited our ADM numbers. Our classrooms are full. No, we didn't, we lost enrollment, which we kind of knew that probably would happen. There was a little confusion about whether we were open for business. We worked hard to do that. But that happens, especially when some schools close. And so we're working to rebuild that enrollment, even though it won't count for this year, it'll count for next year, certainly. So we're trying to get those budget issues in better shape and get our financial house in order. And I think down the road, we may look at a referendum, but it's too early to say that because we need to get it together. Now, I will tell you, I don't know what's going to happen to the deficit, which is right now about $108 million. There's no way I can cut my way out of that. I'm just going to tell you real straight. And there are people that think the state of Indiana should bail it out. Now, y'all know this, and I've learned, Miss Moore told me this. She helped educate me. When I hear we have 42% tax collections, people think only 42% of our people are paying. That is not true. 72% of our people are paying. But because of the tax caps, it reduces that amount. And so really more people are paying. Sometimes people hear that 42% and they think, well, why aren't more people paying their taxes? Well, they are, but in the tax cap thing. So we know that has hurt Gary, Indiana, those tax caps. And it's hurt a lot of big, urban communities, South Bend, Indianapolis. I mean, why they're struggling, they can't hire police officers, it's because of tax caps. So I kind of wish the legislature would take a look at this, but that's certainly part of our issue. So I don't know, but here's what I know, that the Distress Unit Appeals Board, that we nicknamed DUAB, those are the people that we report to. And so they're looking for us to approve at least the month-to-month expenses. They know that I don't have a magic bullet to figure out $100 million. And maybe I should start buying lotto tickets or lottery tickets. I never remember. And then I always think, when it's like 600 million, I should go buy one. You're never going to win. How silly. But maybe I should, but I don't remember. Personnel. As I said, we did an audit of our classrooms after we did our student counts, and frankly, one might think that we have too many teachers. We don't. I think some reductions were made, and we had to call some of those people back because our problem right now as relates to teachers is that we need to convince teachers that they want to come to Gary to teach, new teachers, because we're having trouble filling our vacancies. We have long-term subs in some classrooms, and that is not what we want. Not because they're not, I appreciate they step up, but we need teachers that are going to be in that classroom and want to be there. So is tomorrow Friday? Yes, tomorrow is. Tomorrow I'm at Purdue. We call it Northwest now. I call it Purdue County Met when I get my master's. Things change, don't they? I'll be at Purdue tomorrow, and Monday I meet with IU Northwest and I think Calumet College, because number one, I want to know, we want student teachers to start coming back in, because I know that when sometimes student teachers work in your school, in our schools here, they're excited about coming to work here. They meet the other teachers, they like the kids, they want to come to work here. But secondly, there will be kids graduating in December, and I want them. And I want to know how I can talk to them, because I'll bring in a couple of friends and see if we can't convince them that this is where they want to work, because I'm going to need those people in semester to fill some of these spots we have. And so to me, that's very important. Facilities, we've done a lot of repair stuff, especially, you've read about some of the things, I'm not going to go over that. We did a lot of roof patching because we didn't want water entering the building, especially when we start to get winter here. It's just not safe. But we're going to have to do an assessment of the facilities to decide you know, what does Gary Community School Corporation look like at about 5,000 students? How many buildings do we need? Which are the best buildings to keep open? I know that we have zones or districts. Some districts don't have a school anymore, but I think we have to probably begin to look at the shape of the building, because when you know, you're looking at investing $10 million, we don't have the ability to do that. So which buildings are in the best shape and how many do we need? And that'll occur this winter sometime, and we'll take a look at that. And lastly, properties. I assume you're talking about the abandoned ones, the closed ones. Now, I had a great meeting today. Tracy Coleman is one of the attorneys that serves the school board of trustees. And I've been getting calls about people that want buildings. Of course, they all want us to give them to them. And I indicated that I don't think the board is interested in giving anything to anybody. We'd like a little cash. But I'm going to bring to the board for them to review for a recommendation in October, someone that wants a donation. But Ms. Coleman was very helpful in helping me understand all of these properties. And there are people that say people want to buy them. So far, I've only seen people that want us to donate them. But I think there will come a time, for example, we're all aware with the South Shore extension coming in. I think a group of ministers told me this, that I don't know the plans as well as you all probably do, but that Edison is like a mile from where the proposal is. Well, I suspect somebody's going to want to talk to me. Now, Edison is where I went to kindergarten, first and second grade. Y'all didn't know, in K-12 school at one time. And that's a big property. You knew that. And so I think that there are going to be people that have some change that they'd like to, hopefully not change. I'd like big bills, but people that are going to want those properties. I did speak to the mayor last night, and I learned that she has been through a Department of Defense grant. I just heard this because I was meeting with Army people who are doing a 5th grade STEM program in March at Gary Armory. It's the first time it's been offered here. And because it's the Gary Armory, we get first dibs on the spots. And when I said, well, what kind of curriculum is it? He said, well, there's a zip line and they crash something and then they have to figure out how to save somebody. So I said, if you're crashing and blowing up stuff, those 5th graders will be all eyes and ears, right? That's what they like to do. So anyway, they told me the National Guard was tearing down buildings the last 2 weeks. It's through a Department of Defense grant that is, they look at abandoned housing sometimes can be a drug haven. So they're using that money to then tear those buildings down. And then we have to pay for, I think, the disposal of materials. So the mayor said she would send me that information because I said, how do I get in that line? Because, you know, that is a problem in those neighborhoods where there are abandoned schools. Not only do they look awful, but they tend to attract perhaps not our finest citizens. And there is probably some drug activity going on there. We have people living in the buildings who may be homeless. And so I'm hoping we can do something. In the meantime, we need to secure all of our vacant buildings. We have to get the stuff out. Not all of that has been done, but we need to identify a place, probably in a school we've closed, where we put everything in one place. And then by law, if you buy something with tax dollars, you must dispose of it by auction, unless it has no value. And so we need to do that because that stuff is just sitting in buildings that are closed that, you know, we could get some money out of it. And we don't want, we have occasionally a problem with arsonists in the buildings that are setting fire to them, which is really difficult for the fire department. So we just need to try to get all that lined up. So that would answer those things, Reverend Mosley, that you asked me. And now I'm happy. I really don't want to talk. I want to listen more to you. So how do we do questions?
We have some cards that have been, if you didn't get you can have more than one card. So if you need an index card to write down, we're asking that you write down your question. Okay, write down your question, and we have a couple of people raise your hand, and we have a couple of people who are putting together the questions that have been asked. I hope what her introduction has kind of maybe opened up your eye to some questions that you might have. So hopefully it prompted a question in your mind. But we got plenty of cards, index cards. So if you need another index card, please raise your hand and they will get that to you. But you want to ask, we wanted this opportunity while we waited because we want you to ask the relevant, tough questions that's needed in these tough times, because there's some answers that have to be given to the public. So we wanted to do this before school started, because we wanted the parents to have the time to strategize, think on where, if they're going to put their child into school. So, but the time is now, and we're at the right time. So we hope. One of the questions that someone asked yesterday was about there are pictures and art.
Yes.
And someone said that art was in Chicago.
Well, there are a couple of stories about that, and I kind of learned about it. There's a lady, where is she? Actually, yes, ma'am. And it was Lou Wallace you were speaking about, right? Some of our school buildings have art in them, and in this case, one of the closed buildings. Now, there's an art collection that was here before I came, that because they were concerned about they didn't want it to be taken. They then gave it they didn't give it, they have it on loan to a gallery in Chicago. Somebody sent me, in this age of social media, somebody sent me a YouTube video that was the Fox 59 story about our art. It's in Chicago. So it's there on display. Most people, I had a call from someone in the work community who was here for a class reunion, I don't know, a month or two ago. They wanted to take the art out and take it to Valparaiso to someone who would display it in an art gallery. People have to realize, though, if that art was purchased with tax dollars, it can't be taken by anybody or given away. It has to be auctioned because it was bought with tax dollars. And so this nice lady, they have a not-for-profit that's willing to go in the building and retrieve it. But I'm a little worried about that because the buildings had arson and we have some water and we don't know if there's contamination. And she says they have hazard suits and well, and you know what I think I'd like you to do is email me again, because that was early on, and so that's probably at the bottom of my 5,000 emails I've probably gotten since I started. But we'll see if there's a safe way to do that. But yes, at our collection we have the contract, so we know it's there. And but at some point I think we owe the IRS some money, and I think they have their eye on getting the proceeds from that. And while we may not want to do that, it's an asset and we may not have a choice about it. So.
Okay, I do have some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the questions is, when will you hire the CAO and CFO, and will they be those positions be marketed locally?
Before you answer that, we are being recorded today, right? Okay, because we want to. Is there any press here?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because we want to. We're so happy that they're here because we want to ask tough questions, get answers, and see how in the future we can move ahead. So go ahead.
And someone wanted me to mention too that we do have 3 board members here. One of the questions that I got was pertaining to the locally
Mr.
elected.
Biggy's here, Mr.
Biggie,
Tolliver's here.
and Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Bailey. There you go, Mr. Bailey. I didn't see you. You snuck in there. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry, Miss President. I haven't seen you in a while. I kept looking at that. I know her.
Okay, so we do.
But you didn't get to the meeting. How are you, ma'am? I know you're teaching all day. Nice to see you. I'm so sorry you're not well. You need to talk to us? Okay, because I'm curious. I'm curious. I'm curious.
Okay, so
All right.
so you can answer that.
So
Okay.
the,
The question, yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
sorry, the
forgot
question
the
again was, when will you hire the
Oh, yeah.
CAO and CFO, and will you market those
Yeah.
positions locally?
the law, the Senate Bill 567 that created the emergency management team, in the law it says that we will, after we're appointed, so the law did not anticipate we would come in with these people. We do have 2 people in temporary roles that are helping us about 30 hours a week. Shalita Miller, if you know her, she's locally a Gary girl. That is Gateway Accounting, I think is her firm. And then if you remember Dr. Lucille Washington, who is the principal at Bailey for many years, she's working kind of in that academic role until we get these things filled. So the jobs, the CAO and CFO, Chief Academic Officer, Chief Financial Officer, will be posted tomorrow. In the law is very specific that we give first consideration in interviews to Gary residents, then Lake County, and then if we can't find anybody, it would be outside of that. But, so, you know, we're very optimistic. We think there are a lot of people here in Gary that have those backgrounds, and we're looking forward to see who we get. So usually when you advertise, you want to go about a month. If you try to do the interviews too quickly, people don't hear about it. So, you know, today we're hiring a young man. He's going to start on Monday, Desmond Alicia. I hope I'm saying his name right. He's a local young man who has a radio show. He works for one of the local newspapers. He's going to help us with some of our public relations because I don't know how to do social media, blast this, you know, I'll say that. But for example, I want him to develop a package on teacher recruitment because young people don't just look for whatever you advertise on the, you know, like, you know, in the paper or whatever. They go on social media and find out all those things, and he's young and he gets all that, and he's going to help us with that. But, so I would say probably 30 days of advertising with interviews the next month. I'm probably optimistic to think we'll have somebody December 1st, because if we're interviewing in November, they have to give notice to their employer if they're employed. So it's probably more likely to be January 1st. Yes, ma'am?
No, there won't be any questions. Not from the floor yet. Be patient. That's why we want everybody to fill out the card. We want to do this in order, so we want everybody to fill it out, fill the card out, and if we have time at the end, then we will open it up to the floor. So make sure, and you can ask as many questions as you want on those cards. So ask tough questions, okay?
And so you know, it would depend, but we'll have the job descriptions posted so people can look at those. And we hope to have those people in place by January 1st.
All right.
Okay. Next question is, when do you anticipate having a budget ready, and will you share the budget with the public?
Oh, well, right now we're in budget time. And so we actually will be presenting a draft budget to the school board at their meeting on October 10th. We have, now things are done a little differently than when the school board would approve the budget. Now we have to have Indianapolis approve the budget. So there'll be information to the board October 10th. We now have a group called the Fiscal Management Board, which is made up of 4 representatives. Attorney Lay, who's appointed by the board, Leanne Piatkowski, who's from the Indiana Department of Education, retired Senator Earlene Rogers, and Dr. Kean from Purdue, the chancellor. They're the Fiscal Management Board. They will, we will have our public hearing in front of them on October the 12th at 3 o'clock at the Gary Career Center. We have invited all the elected officials, the local school board, senators, state reps, the mayor, anyone. It is a public meeting, so anyone can come. It's been advertised, and so that will be when we have the hearing, and then we have to be in Indianapolis on October 31st. Of course, I remember that's Halloween, so I'm afraid to go in front of them. It might be trick or treat. I hope it's a treat. Nah, they'll be all right. And they have to approve I have to have approval from the DUAB board, and then we have to meet in the afternoon with the state finance board. They have to have the other approval. Everything we do gets approval from 2 agencies in Indianapolis. So we will then have an adopted budget for 2018.
Okay, some of the questions are overlapping, so you might hear your question and it might be just a little different because, like for instance, a lot of people seem to be very concerned about what your plans are going to be for Word Emerson.
Sure. Well, I have said this to people that when we're trying to figure out what's going to happen, we have to look at whether we can continue to support 2 high schools. Because I can tell you in any community with about 5,200 kids, they have 1 high school. Maryville has, I gotta remember, they have over 6,000. I think they might have 7,000 students. They have 1 high school. Most of the area has 1 high school, and they can be about our size. High schools are your most expensive facilities to maintain, for all the reasons you know. And so the other thing we have to be cognizant of, and we'll be doing a facility review, is the Word Emerson building is not in very good shape. The roof is probably one of the worst ones we have. And you know, just the physical facility is not good. And so we're just going to have to take a look at that facility to decide if we're going to keep 1 high school, is it Westside, is it Word Emerson? But to be honest with you, if you're looking at a building that's going to require millions of dollars to bring it to a certain level, and you have a building in better shape, the difficulty is that it's all the way on the west side. That's where the plan with the Gary Career Center being more on the east side would give us some balance, because if we turn this into an early college high school, as well as a career and technical, it would give residents a choice. So I'm not telling you that's a final decision, but I think we have to make hard decisions. And the hard decisions are we can't afford to continue to support 2 high schools.
The west side is 1970, right?
Well, that's when I graduated, so that's done.
69.
Okay. Well, I didn't say it was a spring chicken, but, you know, see, it isn't just the age of the building, it's how much it's been kept up over the years. And it's, you know, I can see, you know, when we first were looking at work, we could see the sky because of the problems with the roof. And it really was a challenge to patch the roof, just to make sure it wasn't open to rain for the, you know, fall and spring and fall.
Can you give an explanation of the monthly operating deficit and how much of a deficit are you experiencing each month?
Sure can. Our monthly deficit is about $1.8 million. We have 20 court judgments against us that require us to pay certain amounts every month, including an amount to the IRS, because we owe the IRS $8.2 million. We owe to vendors that we didn't pay $8.5 million. And so our payrolls about, you know, over $1 million. So if you have, for example, this month we have 3 payrolls. So we only get enough state support to run those 2. So kind of the way to think of it, under when we had the students we had last year, we could make 2 payrolls, but we didn't have money for anything else. So if we needed to fix something, and what's happened to capital projects, which is, we're supposed to have money in there, that money was all being brought into the general fund to just pay bills. And even our transportation money, because of the tax caps, we're not getting very much money in the second half, but we still have to pay the bus company if your children are going to be transported. So the deficit is the fact that we have judgments. We owe $4 million to Cigna, which is a health insurance provider. So we pay $400,000. That's part of, so that part of that bleeding is past due things. Really, if we could live on just what our costs are, but again, you have to have money for supplies and light bulbs and you know, you got to buy, you know, just stuff. I mean, I'm not talking about fluffy, fancy stuff. I mean, just basic stuff. And so that's our challenge, that we're not, and now because we lost enrollment, we lost about 500 kids. Well, you multiply times 8,000, that's $4 million we have to cut from the 2018 budget. So that makes it even harder.
All right. Okay, with the expansion of the Career Center, will the Northwest Indiana Building Trades be involved with technical courses?
Well, I'd sure like to think that. I've not had any conversations. We have a building trades program there, but we don't have a lot of children enrolled. And when, you know, we need to look at, I don't know enough about, I mean, I have a nephew who's an iron worker, and I know they go through apprenticeships, but I want to know what kind of feeder programs they would be interested in offering so that we could build some capacity for the trades. Because have you played a plumber lately? They're doing all right. You know, don't think there's anything wrong with being a plumber. I know they don't get all that money when they fix your faucet or whatever, because the company gets some money. But I think so. We have not had formal conversations, but it would make sense to do that.
Okay. What are your viewpoints on returning Roosevelt to the Gary Community School Corporation?
Well, this has been kind of an interesting journey about Roosevelt. Because Roosevelt, as you know, is not a charter school. It was a takeover school about 6 years ago now. It has not been successful as a takeover school. It remains an F school. Now, we signed an MOU, and we've been negotiating the MOU. I'm not sure it's signed yet with what the costs are, et cetera. But this is what I understand to be the case, that if they don't make improvement, if they stay in F 2 years in a row, the building comes back to us. And I don't need another high school, but I recognize the historic importance of Roosevelt. I mean, listen, I know about Roosevelt. I mean, growing up in this area, I know it's very historic. And I don't know, I've never been in the building. Now, people who've been in the building tell me that it's not like the third floor is stripped and, you know, things have been taken out of the building. But, you know, there are people that have told me they believe Roosevelt should be the high school if we get the building back. Now, you know, if it's going to take me $10 million to get that in shape, I don't know if that's an option. But I do recognize that. But I don't know if it's coming back to us or not. But, you know, there's some discussion that eventually it will.
Okay.
Well, let me say this. Roosevelt has a section of Roosevelt is not being used because it has mold in it. So they got to deal with the environmental issue because kids are in the building.
That's right.
And they're getting that. So.
Air quality is a big deal now because we have so many children that have respiratory issues that, you know, if you have mold in a building, boy, you got to really get that cleaned up.
Okay. For several years, the parents were not allowed or given a written copy of the Title I budget for parents to review and have input according to federal law. Can we receive a copy of it now for 2017 to plan for 2018-19?
Well, when we came to Gary on August 1st, none of the Title I money had been spent. It was $4 million some $100,000. It was a lot of money. And there were lots of requests, but I think what happened, honestly, and I'm not saying that anybody did anything wrong, because they didn't, was just, I think, in the takeover, no one knew quite who to take the action, and so nothing happened. So we began to look at the Title I budget because we had to spend all but $1 million of that by tomorrow, because it was last year's money. So we had a big file folder of a lot of things that people wanted. And so I always believe that I want to talk to principals to see what they think, because they had put plans together in the spring that we weren't sure that those ever got to where they needed to be. So, for example, if someone said they wanted this software that cost $700,000, our question was to principals, who's using this? And sometimes we found out the answer was no one. So we didn't buy it. Now, you need to know two things about Gary Community Schools. because money got mixed up. You know, school finance is a crazy thing, but you have to stay in your lane. Okay, so Title I money's for Title I, and you can't use it to pay for the transportation costs unless it's there's a special thing with Title I. So you have to kind of stay in your lane there. Well, over the years in the past, we haven't always stayed in our lane, and we've commingled money. So right now, I can't spend any Title I money unless the state Title I office in the Department of Ed approves my invoice. So they look at everything. So we had Nathan Williamson from the Indiana Department of Education came up and spent a day with us looking at all the things that we thought. And one of the first priorities is we learned that we had not been able to buy textbooks for 6 to 10 years. So we spent $1.5 million on textbooks. I tell this story, and forgive me for those of you who've had to listen to it before. I was in Costco with my husband, right? Because suddenly I'm no longer anonymous. One of the teachers knew me from something, and he said, "You know, Dr. Hinckley, I teach first grade. I don't have any reading books." I taught first grade a long time ago. It was the best job I ever had. Kids love you. They hug you all the time. They like your earrings. You know, grown-ups don't do that necessarily every day. They notice when I had a pretty dress on or I smelled nice, but grown-ups don't tell me that. How do you teach reading with no books? You can't do it. So we had to have those purchases clear. So we had to make a lot of quick decisions, but we didn't make foolish decisions. Now, the Title I budget that was kind of submitted, right now I'm getting a lot of grace from the state because I promised I will do everything by the book. So if I don't, I think they'll horsewhip me, but so far. So we're asking to redo the budget. That would be for the next school year. Because we want to ensure that the needs that principals have identified are in that budget and that they're eligible expenditures under Title I. So as soon as we get a better sense of that, because we have to rework the budget, then, those are public dollars and those budgets are available.
Let me say this, if, I know a couple of people came in, if you did not get a card and you want to write your question, please, we have plenty of cards. So if you heard something and now you have a question, please write it on the card and raise your hand so we can know that you have a question, and we'll try to integrate it into these questions that we have.
Okay, the next question says, it sounds like you will be recruiting first-year teachers. Will there be a teacher mentorship program and diversity training?
That's a good question because I'm not sure what we've had in place. If y'all don't know her, I don't know if you know Miss Leneva Dunham. She's president of the Gary Teachers Union. And she and I bark at each other about every day about something. She helps me, I help her. Sometimes we don't talk for a minute. Then we get over it, and it's all right. But she's a great lady. She's been very resourceful. Have we done teacher induction and diversity training in the past?
Teacher mentorship?
Teacher mentorship, sorry.
Yes.
We have. Yes. Have we done them recently?
No. But probably no diversity. We haven't had to do that.
Because we haven't had to do it because we have a more diverse teaching staff. Well, I would say that certainly one of the things that the research says about new teachers is they leave the profession in 5 years if we don't have support for them in the building when they start. Teaching's hard work. It always has been hard work, but it's even harder today because we have, lots of challenges in the classroom. So I think that's a good question. I hope I get enough people that I have to worry about mentoring, and maybe Leneva can help us figure out how we might do that.
And it's about dollars.
Of course it's about dollars. But I also know that if we bother to recruit them and get them in there, and if we don't mentor them, you and I might have to talk about a little stipend or something to help teachers to do that. It's not going to cost us a fortune, but it makes a difference of whether they stay or not. So.
All right.
Okay, is there a plan to involve the elected school board in future decisions for the schools?
Well, the elected school board, you all probably know that in the law, the emergency manager, who is me, has the authority of the school board as well as that of the superintendent. What the law says, they will meet once a month, and they will provide recommendations to me. Now, we've only been at this a couple months, and we've had some rough patches, I will tell you honestly, because obviously they feel strongly about being elected officials, as they should. And the problem is, when you meet once a month, and you're in a formal meeting, it doesn't lend itself to a lot of dialogue, because it's a business meeting, you're running a business meeting. So, first of all, today, in fact, Tracy Coleman helped me with this. We had a request for a property donation. So I said, how do we respond to this? Because, you know, she gave me a big look. I got more homework to read and whatever, all these things that I need to know, which is fine. And then she said to me, my recommendation to you would be that you ask the school board, to ask them to look at it and give you a recommendation. Now, they cannot vote, but they can give me recommendations per the law. So we will be giving them the budget on the 10th to look at ahead of time, so before we go to the hearing, and if there are recommendations or things they want to talk about. So we need to get better at that, but it's kind of a different relationship we're all getting used to, because when you only have one meeting a month, it makes it hard to do that. So involving them to the extent that I can, they are elected officials. You elected them, and they certainly have a voice. The other thing that I again confirmed today with the attorneys at the state level, that I suggested to them a few weeks ago, was that I can hold an individual meeting with them, one-on-one, to seek their opinion or listen to some things they're concerned about. And I'm willing to do that with each member individually every month. Because, for example, I happened to see Nellie Moore at a foundation meeting when she explained to me about the tax collections. It was really 72%. So, you know, there are people that just, and you know, they know their communities and they know what people are saying to them. So that's a get better for us, and we're going to continue to work on it.
Okay. Do you plan on implementing a STEM curriculum at any school?
Well, I think I just mentioned it's not a STEM, it's not school, it's the 5th grade, and it's the first year we'll get to do it in March. That actually the Army's involved in, it's at the Gary Armory, and so our 5th graders will spend 1 day a week for 5 weeks. And this program's been around 23 years, it's been in South Bend, Fort Wayne, and Indianapolis, and according to these gentlemen, Representative Lisklowski had pushed hard to get it in Gary. And so we're very excited about that. But it has caused us to think about STEM. There is a school in Fort Wayne, they told me, that is a total STEM school. And I know that former superintendent, Dr. Campbell, Myrtle Campbell, who's on the foundation board, she told me at McCullough that they have been looking at that. I want to go see this school because I'd like to see what they're doing. But, you know, I think that this is something that we need to think about for 6th, 7th, 8th grade kids. It has to be something that's more engaging and project, because they're just not going to, you know, when we live in this world where they all do this, they're not interested in reading a book and answering the questions at the end of the chapter. Science is exciting, and math, they don't think it's so exciting, but the gentlemen, the Army officers that were there said, when they ask them at the beginning if they like technology, oh yeah, they like science. When they say math, they all go like this. He said, by the end of the 5 weeks, they're liking math because they see the application of it. So we don't have a formal plan, but it is in our head that maybe this is something that could be a good thing for us here.
How much have you spent so far on upgrading facilities?
I don't know what the roofing bill is. I know that initially, probably with fixing all the plumbing and cleaning and mowing grass, but that isn't really facilities, that was kind of maintenance. I'm going to say probably the plumbing was $300,000, but we had a lot of plumbing problems, and we needed to get those fixed because your children deserve that. That's all I'm gonna say. I have no idea what the roofing, because I haven't seen a bill yet, but I'm gonna guess that it's probably an equal number. And we had to do some things for fire safety. We needed to get new fire extinguishers. All the ones we had were old ones that had old tags on them. We needed to fix the alarm systems. We needed to post evacuation. You know, you see how you get out of the building, exit lights had to be fixed. So I'm going to assume with that we have to have spent close to $1 million. I'm just being honest, but it needed to be done because none of you, one of the things you expect from us, that when you send your children to school, that we've kept them safe. And so fire safety and making sure all those things are in place are very important. As well as, you know, the nickname is we had the Bucket Brigade. And it wasn't the Bucket Brigade like, you know, we were doing something with water. They were everywhere. And we had parents that had chosen not to come to Gary Community Schools because of the buckets. But we needed to secure the roofs because we know about the winters in Northwest Indiana. And it's just not a very good thing. We're losing heat. You know, you spend all that money to NIPSCO, they're going to raise the bill and going out the door. So.
Okay, this person wants to know about dual credits and wants to also know if students would be able to begin in 10th grade with dual credits so that they could get college credits as well.
Well, the high schools receive, you know, we get a kind of a report card. Those are going to be released next week. Got a lot of points for things like dual credit, and so we do offer that. I think there is more we can do, which is part of what I want to look at the Gary Career Center. Dual credit's very important. It gives kids a head start at a reasonable price to getting credits, so when they have that college education, if you have a year or 18 months under your belt, then your college costs, you're not going to have $60,000 in loans because that's already paid. So we're just beginning to explore what more we could offer.
Okay. Some of these I have already asked in number 4. Okay, how are you ensuring that our students are producers as opposed to the tailored paradigm with students as products? And can you give us some idea of what your curriculum plans will be?
Can I look at that question?
Sure.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by the Taylor. Can you tell me what that means? Frederick Taylor, is that who we're talking about?
Students, yes, as products, we vote them and put information in. Now the new paradigm is students as producers.
Right.
How do we ensuring that we're using their talents and that we're directing them in the right way to use what they have?
We have some work to do there. I think I understand what you're saying now. The kind of the factory mentality of what we're doing. Now those factories aren't here any longer. So that's why I think looking at STEM, looking at current technical education, looking at early college, high school, but part of it is also getting the opportunity for kids to have internships and job shadowing so they can look at that. But we have some work to do there to have a more robust curriculum that allows them to be more in that way. Because the best job security is the job they can't automate, right? That's thinking jobs, that's creating jobs, that's, you know, that's why we love being teachers. They're never going to automate us. They try to do that with computer software. That hasn't worked out real well. So, you know, those kinds of jobs that are really, we don't even know what they're going to be right now. And we've got more work to do there.
Okay, it says, did the state of Indiana provide a job description for you, and what do you feel was their overall objective?
For me, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, there's been nothing, there's never been an emergency manager before. And I think if you read the law, I don't know that it would give you a real job description. It essentially says that you come in and you're responsible for making the decisions about the problems in a school district to allow those to get solved and hopefully to turn it around. To me, I have no agenda other than every day I come to work early and stay late and try to solve the problems that people identify. So, for example, today we had a 2-hour workshop for our principals and social workers because last week I had a call from Judge Irma Lewis Shannon, who runs, and Commander Rice, who run the truancy court. 80% of the children that are truant are 10 years old and under. And we had not made one referral yet this year. So the judge left a message that said urgent. So when the judge calls you and says it's urgent, you call that judge back, right? Otherwise, she's going to send Commander Rice after me. He's a real big guy. But the truth is, we needed to retrain our people to understand that our families deserve that support. It's not about just getting after them because their kids aren't in school. Commander Rice told this story that I thought was important. He said someone they had referred a few years ago went to the house, knocked on the door. When he knocked on the door frame of the door went in. This mother, the landlord was telling her he didn't have to fix it. She had no running water, and he wouldn't fix it because he said she had a lease and he didn't have to. Now, you know, some of you might be okay in that situation, but some people would be overwhelmed. So she wasn't sending her children to school, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't bathe. So he was able to contact other agencies that would help that, first of all, get the landlord reported to the city to get after them, get the water fixed, and I think he actually found better housing for her so that she could recover from that to send her children to school. Sometimes, you know, my mother used to call it the Judge Judy factor. You know, we look at the situation and we're ready to judge. But these are people that are trying to help families. Now, are there families sometimes that don't make good choices about sending their children to school? Absolutely. But that isn't always the most of the people. They're just struggling. And we weren't doing our referrals. So that's the kind of a situation that's easily fixed. I don't know who was in those jobs at the time. I don't know who understands. So the answer is, it's a required meeting, 2 hours. I sat there the first hour, and then I had a call with Duab the second hour. And here's the procedure. Here's how we're going to be sure it gets done. Principals are going to do this. Social workers are going to do this. But we need to do that now, because according to the judge, we were sending referrals at the end of the year. Too late. We want to get them early. And if they're little ones, and that habit of not going to school gets ingrained, then we're going to lose those children. So is that written in a job description? No. It's just a problem that appeared. Now, you know, every day there are things that people come and we have to solve. And so what we try to do is prioritize, because the amount of work is overwhelming. And we have a team that they aren't here every day, but of about 10 to 12 people. They come and go depending on what's going on. We have curriculum people that go into the buildings and they work to monitor instruction and make schools stronger academically. We have 5 accountants working in addition to Shalita Miller that are working on budgets and dealing with, we have reports to give to the state, you know, things that have to be done. Dr. Seaman is here, and he's helping with me with community engagement, but he's a very talented guy. He'll hate that I said this, but he's taught classes on, and he has done customer service. There's something I've heard from parents is that some of our people in the office could be a little nicer. And so he's going to do a little training next week on customer service. Because, you know, sometimes when people are cross with parents, that's when they go out the door and go to the charter school.
That's right.
So come on, we have to do a better job. And I understand sometimes parents get a little owly. You know, you just tell them to take a breath, get them a cup of coffee, let them calm down, let's go. But, so anyway, there's no roadmap for this. We're the only ones where the total takeover was done. Muncie Community Schools has a financial takeover, not the academic one. But I was just asked today by the NAACP to go to their conference in Indianapolis in October to be on a panel to talk about this. But I suggested to her that what I should do, what I'd like to do, is talk about what are the red flags that should tell you to get a hold of stuff so you don't ever get here. That's right. The red flags. Because sometimes we don't know. And I would tell you, sometimes board members don't know. And it isn't because they're not smart people, but they meet a couple times a month. They're not running the schools. You know, in fairness to them, they look at reports, they assume that people like me, that when I was a superintendent, and you know, when we're telling them how things are, but sometimes things get away from us. So anyway, there is no job description. I am accountable to the state of Indiana for the DUAB and the Board of Finance, but ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, I'm accountable to you because you're the citizens here. And all of our costs are coming from the state. Your the school district is not paying my salary or Fred's or anything. That's coming from the state, and that's to support Gary. So ultimately, though, if we don't do a good job, our agenda is simply this: is to solve the problems and try to turn things around.
Okay. We talked a couple of times about Shalita Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Will she be able to apply for the CFO?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. The next two are kind of personal questions, like who is in charge of the special education department?
Well, I thought when you said personal questions, you were going to ask me if this is my real hair color. Now, I'll tell you it's not. If you want to know how much I weigh, I'm not telling you that. And I'm 5'5", but I'm shrinking quickly. So that happens when you get older. So the question again is?
Who is the head of special ed?
Who is the head of special ed? When I first came, we had an interim person. There's something in here flying.
Yeah, it is.
That's all right.
No fruit fly.
No, that's all right. Don't worry. Just get rid of the bananas. It'll be all right. Joan McCormick was the interim director of special ed that was hired there. She was hired by the Indiana Department of Education because we had not had anyone for a bit. And as you know, there's a lot of regulation in special ed. About a month ago, we hired Dr. Ileana, I'm still learning her name, El Kalani. I might be saying it wrong. Did I get it close? And she is from Illinois. She's been with us about a month. Very capable young woman. And for example, one of the things that came out of the parent meeting last week, Fred and I were at 2 parent meetings, was a concern about programming at Lincoln, that is at West Side. And so I sent her over there. And we needed to take care of a couple of things that we were in violation. So that's exactly what we've been working on this week to get some of those things addressed. And so she is currently the director of special education.
Okay, the next one is, I just got, and it says, in regards to special needs students, is the district focusing on inclusion for, and I don't know what that word is, for what? Most special needs students, and providing resource services that are indicated in the student's IEP.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Either our old eyes or you need work in handwriting. I don't know which one. But we'll let you decide that. I'm just kidding. Listen, I used to teach first grade. My handwriting has just gone to the dogs. I write too fast. Let me say this. Historically, we have not had a lot of inclusion here, even though it is the law. And so that becomes a path because, you know, you just don't announce one day we're all going to do inclusion. What we're helping staff to understand is it is the law. And so the least restrictive environment in terms of having children to be included is what we need to work toward. Now, I'm not going to tell you we've solved that in a month, but I can tell you that we're working toward that end because the law changed it's been a while, maybe 10 years, you know, I forget how many. Used to be children were in special needs classrooms, and remember we only had them in art, music, and PE. They used to call that mainstream. That's an old term. Today, the law was changed about 10 years ago because what they learned in the research is that once we put a label on children, those children were in a classroom and they did worse. So the law now, the federal law says that we must show why children aren't in regular education all the time. So we have to justify why they might be in a special class. Now, that is not for children with more severe disabilities who need to be in self-contained classrooms. But for example, we just had this conversation this week in another principals meeting of a different sort about what we call general education interventions. We have, for example, and this is a challenge, we refer a lot of children for testing, but our percentage of placements are low. Very costly to have children evaluated, and then if they really don't qualify, we've spent all that time by school psychologists, and so we have so many referrals that we must, I think we have to deal with them in 50 days or something. We have a backlog that's unbelievable. So we've started to say to everyone, if you don't, you have to fill out this RTI or in other words, we want to see the interventions you tried in the regular classroom first. And if you haven't met that test, then we're going to send your referral back to you as a teacher. We've got to get rid of this idea in our head. And when I first taught, I remember this. We all thought if children need extra help, we need to get them referred and tested and let somebody else work with them. That's not the way things are today. It's more having support in the classroom for those children. But I would also say, in fairness to teachers, that has made teaching much more challenging. Because, back when I was educated, when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, we didn't have a lot of classes about how to meet individuals. I mean, we were taught how to teach kids to read and do math, but working with some of those special needs. So we have some training needs that we probably need to address, because sometimes we have children that present some serious challenges. They have behavior issues. Autism was something, for example, that I never heard of when I was teaching long ago, but obviously it's something that is a big deal today. And it is a different kind of disability, and it doesn't manifest itself in the same way with all children. So you have to learn those things. And so those are things that are challenging. It doesn't mean we can't get better. It just means that we have some work to do.
We have two more questions, and then we're going to close. Oh, hold on.
Okay. What is your approach to provide information to find out what is the actual interest in programs that you say have no participation?
Well, first of all, we have to ensure that one of the things we have to, this is to get better for us. This is the first place I've ever been where we didn't have schedules prior to the end of the year for kids to take home. And we even had started school in a place where we didn't have schedules. That's not the way it's done. What happens is, January, they start scheduling, and then as you look at what you're offering, what you end up with depends on enrollment, who selects. But we sort of haven't done it that way here, and I don't know why, and I'm not blaming anybody, but that's what we're going to be doing this year. So I think that we determine what we offer, but I think that also you look at what other high schools are offering. Ultimately, I just had this conversation with a parent today. They're shopping for high schools. They don't know if they're going to stay in Gary Community School Corporation because they want to look at what Chesterton's offering and Maryville's offering. And so we also need to look at what those schools are offering because we want to be competitive with all of them. But ultimately, if children don't sign up for something, then we may not need that. But that tells me we also have to kind of survey what they're interested in and what they want to learn. But first of all, we've got to get on track with the requirements because the general diploma is going away. State Board of Education is, and now you have to have 440. And let's face it, I'm going to tell you, I took German in high school. I should have picked Spanish because I think that might have helped me in my life more. I wasn't a great German student. And if I'd had to pass a test or something, I probably would have been in there a couple more years. And so we have to realize, for example, that not every child loves algebra. And they need extra support. So sometimes you have to put elective classes that give them extra support in some of the harder classes to be sure they can be successful. Because ultimately, if they do not pass the 10th grade exam, they do not receive a diploma. And we have to be concerned about that.
And this is the final question, and it showed up on several sheets, asking if you would be open to have community forums as we go through this process. And I think that this evening has been very informative, and I think it will help people make decisions that we just spoke about and where their children will go to school. And I would like to invite you to make this the place where you're welcome to have those forums right here at Trinity.
We appreciate your hospitality. We have had 3 community forums. I think we're also going to do some engagement with students, probably high school students, to have them tell us what they think about their high schools, because they usually know pretty well based on things their friends tell them about other places and what they want to see. But I think keeping the community dialogue is important because I realize this is a big change, and it has created a lot of anxiety and frustration and fear. And so I think the more transparent we can be in having conversation, just like we've been having tonight, or at least by answering your questions, is really, really important in the long run for people. We want to restore the confidence of our citizens in Gary Community School Corporation. And we're working on building back that pride that we all remember came at a different time. Because again, there are a lot of great people here, a lot of people that want to see us succeed. But you must also know there are people that hope I fail. And some of y'all call them haters. You know, I don't read anything on Facebook, so you don't have to post anything nasty on there because I'm not going to read it anyway. But you know, I don't know why they would fail, because I would tell you this. We were told this in a meeting a few weeks ago by the Indiana Department of Education, and this is what we were told, that if the emergency manager is not successful, there may not be any more options. Well, I'm not going to be the person that decides that we hit the end of the road. I want Gary Community School Corporation to have those options. We have big problems, but I think we're up to the task, and certainly all of you being here tonight tells me that you care very much about this community and you want to see us succeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're thankful that you're here. We're thankful that everybody is here. We want to stay on time. We want to stay on time. Just a minute, sir. Just a minute. What, you got a question or? Okay, but we didn't get to everybody, so you didn't have a resemblance of your question? Okay, quickly, let's take your question, because we want to stay on time, and we normally, we do things different. So this is the first time that we're doing it this way. We normally make sure that everything is concise and precise. So what is your question? Ask it quickly, and then we're going to also have the closing remarks and prayer after that.
At the conclusion of the contract, and my original question also included, how do you see the nature of the relationship between you and the elected officials evolving? But the second part of that question was, when this contract concludes, where do you hope to see the school board in its role, what it's doing? Where do you hope to see them at the end of this contract?
First of all, the contract is for 2 years because the state of Indiana does a 2-year budget cycle. It doesn't mean that they couldn't continue it, but for currently, the contract is for 2 years through 2020. It really isn't my decision. I have nothing to do with whatever this was a legislative decision with regard to the school board. I think that the assumption would be that if we get things back on track, But there are stipulations in the law, now you're gonna test my memory, which by 7:30, it's 12 hours, that's a little weak. But there are some things in there that we have to meet. For example, I think, there are so many years that we have to have a balanced budget. There's so many years we have to do this and that. So just by, and I'm sorry, I just don't remember those at the top of my head. But to be honest with you, I don't know how that will be done in 2 years. So I think the legislature will make a decision they won't do it at the end of the 2 years, they'll do it in the budget session as to whether they're going to continue the relationship with the emergency manager. And then if they don't, I don't know what their choices are. So it would be my assumption that we need to show, they've said to us verbally, we need to show enough progress for them to continue to invest in this relationship. But whatever happens with the school board is a legislative decision.
We're not going. I remember what I said. I said, please sign the card. Okay. If you didn't get your, you know, we could be here all night. Oh, couldn't we? Okay. So what I'm going to ask, if you got a question that's going to a 30-second question, please ask it, and that's going to be the last question because we won't. This is not the end, and we hope that people will have put their information down on the sign-in sheet so that we have your information. We do want to stay in touch. I went to the meeting with the parents at the Gary Career Center, so there's opportunity for there to be a discussion. So quickly, could we have your question, and then we're going to have some closing words from a school board member, and then. Okay.
As a parent, you've heard this question. You said that you mentioned that there's not interest in certain programs. Okay, I had posed another question. Knowing that you're probably going to have to combine schools, I understand that. I'm a business person, numbers are numbers. Okay. With that, how do you determine which programs our children need extracurricularly, or are they going to just be held to standardized testing? But the programs that we do have between these two schools, whether, you know, how do you determine which programs that our children have and will keep?
Well, first of all, sir, I heard you say this the other night at the board meeting. Let me speak to the standardized test question. I know you said you're not as concerned about that, but I just want to point out at Word.
I didn't say I wasn't as concerned.
All right, 85% of the children who took the 10th grade math exam failed. That is unacceptable. And so when you say that, I just want you to understand that to me, I want 85% passing, and we've got a lot of work to get done. Now, with regard to programs, I just had this conversation with someone who mentioned this today. We have the Theater Guild at West Side. I've been to West Side, but not to that facility. So when you look at that as a center for some of the arts and activities that are at work, it seems like that would be a natural thing that could continue to prosper, because I know the Theater Guild is an outside group, but I can tell you when I was at Warren, I don't know that, but at Warren we had a performing arts center, Warren Central. It was for children, but we had outside groups that used it as well. And so when you look at that, one of the gripes I've heard from the Word faculty is they don't have sports. Well, you know, if you have them all together, you can have a more efficient use of resources. So, you know, I would want to look at, before we start taking the cutting, you know, look at what other area high schools, particularly those that are on our borders, are offering to make sure that we're competitive with them. And so they have all those fine arts programs, they have sports, they have music, they have clubs. We want to be sure that we have all those things as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hinckley. Now we're going to call on Mr. Carlos Tolliver, who is a school board member, with some closing remarks and then we will have prayer and dismissal.
Thank you, Brother Mosley. First of all, I really want to welcome all my colleagues here who took the time to attend the meeting, and all of you as citizens who took their time. I did want to share a couple of observations with you.
First of all, Dr. Hinckley is, I want to acknowledge her being open and transparent since she's been here, and that is a plus. I would also share with you that, yes, the emergency manager is a novice process in this state. However, it has an historical precedent of failure in Detroit. Then we look up and there's something else that I want to remind you of or inform you, that the state has been in charge of our federal programs Title I for the last 3 years. And that the state has made the final decision on our finances for the last 2. So if we see situations that are less than enviable, the state has already been here. I would say this, that historical precedent shows that when you close schools, you lose students. There's no way around it. And I would like to offer this rhetorical observation. I find it unimaginable that we would keep a school open that is operated by a private operator that has had 6 years of Fs with a student-teacher ratio of 12 to 1. But we're going to perhaps close a school where its residents pay between 20 and 35% of all property taxes. And if they close that school, that's going to have a negative impact on the property values and our ability to generate revenue for our schools. That is just an observation. I would say this, what we're trying to do in the first district right now is work on a partnership with the emergency manager. Those of you know me that I've not been an advocate of this process. But it's here now. And we have to look and work with the people that are here to see if we can do the best for the community and students. What we're trying to do in the first district is set a model where there is a partnership with the emergency manager and we have real influence on who's hired, teachers and administrators, and what type of programs are going to be offered in these schools. Whereas I have a great deal of respect for the people that are in here, it is we who live here. It is we who understand our communities. It is we who understand what the consumers want. Donald Drake said in 1991 that education had become a consumer marketplace. That means consumers are making decisions as to where the parents as consumers, where they send their children. What we're talking about and what we can hope to use as a model is have an all-inclusive pre-K through 12 pipeline in the first district. We hear about the career pathways. We're talking about the same thing with wraparound services, all the sense of making this product with the Gary Community School Corporation more marketable. And I'll leave you with this thought. I can't, as a person, an individual, when my grandchildren left, my grandson left Banneker last year, I couldn't offer an argument. I couldn't dispute it with his parents. And that's one of the reasons why I chose for this position. I cannot tell another parent to come to something that I would not send my own to. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that that's a practical reality. So what I hope that we will understand is that this land that we have, that's $396 million worth of buildings and land, we have to make sure that there's accountability for that. We have to make sure that there's accountability annually about how our dollars are spent. That if we've got $1 million worth of physical repairs, we've got to have a certain percentage of that reflects our population so we can maintain our economy here. That's crucial. And lastly, I'll say this, that the success of our district is dependent, our community is dependent upon the success of this district. Our market values, people that move in with children, that's our challenge. People with children don't move in here after they look and see our test scores. We've got to improve that. And we've got to work together to improve that. But again, I say this like I said at the DUAB. I can't support money, giving up tax dollars, my tax dollars, if I don't have a voice. And I think that we must have a legitimate voice in terms, and I'm confident that with the people that we can work together to get that type of voice that we need to make sure that
what we starting off in the first district, and my pastor's telling me I got to go, but what we start off in the first district, we can move out throughout the city.
Thank you. Give yourself a hand for coming out. I hope everyone has signed in, that we know who you are. So we don't want this just to be some flash, some event, and nothing happened. So we want to stay in touch, so make sure you signed in, and we will go from there. We hope to have other events. Need more parents. Need more parents. And I know parents came to the meetings last week, but I thank those who came out tonight. I thank all of you for spending your time. Now we're going to call on our pastor for our closing prayer.
Eternal God, we thank Dr. Hinckley. We thank each and every person here. Now, God, you have allowed us to be informed. Now, stir us up to be engaged with hope, engaged with strength, engaged with love, engaged with compassion, and engaged with perseverance. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen. Amen.
Doesn't take much to not know. You got tomorrow.
We won't run you out, so if you want to hang around, do that. Yeah. Don't forget that you can look at our table out there with all the flyers, because we have events coming up that we would love for you to be a part of.
Do you have her number?
Ask her, President Dallas Minister.
How'd you keep me busy?
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad. Hey, how you doing? Thank you.
Okay, good, all right.
How
you doing? All right.
Oh, really?
Hey, Dr.